Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. So after my last podcast about marriage to the people of the book, I didn't really receive any questions, but I received some very interesting case studies that I wish to share with you from people who emailed me after listening to the podcast. And I want to share them with you because I want to highlight the problems that arose in the lives of people who didn't do this properly. Okay, they didn't follow Islamic law properly. They thought they married Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book, but they fell into a marriage with polytheists. So I want to highlight how this can really affect your life when you don't understand the ruling of this particular marriage. And I'm also finding that a lot of people do not want to speak about this subject because it's quite controversial and it's quite complex as well. And at the same time, it's causing a huge problem in our Muslim societies. Okay, so when people are not marrying those who are lawful for them, it has a ripple effect on the children and families and the society in general. And then what starts to happen is that when more and more people start doing what's haram, it becomes normalised, and then people start to see it as something halal. Okay, so I really do want to address this before more people jump in to invalid marriages with people whom they believe are people of the book. So inshallah, I'm really hoping and praying that someone listens to these podcasts and they are saved from jumping into an invalid marriage that is not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there used to be huge debates about this subject among the prominent Muslim scholars, okay? So if you look into the Salafi manhaj, you will see that the scholars who follow this manhaj believe that there are no more Ahl al-Kitab after Islam. Okay, so when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he came with his message and he taught people about Tawheed and Aqidah and morals and everything that comes with Islam, they were of the opinion that no one could marry from the Jews and the Christians after the message of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came. Okay, so it would mean that everyone who wanted to marry people who were not Muslim had to convert. This was their opinion, because the Christians and the Jews did not pray like the Muslims. They didn't fast, they didn't go for Hajj, they didn't do all of these things. So in order for men and women to have homes and raise children upon the Quran and Sunnah, the Salafi manhaj actually specifies that both men and women should not marry anyone who is not a Muslim, because Islam came as the final religion and the Quran came as the final book. So anyone who wants to marry a Muslim has to convert, whether they are from Ahl al-Kitab or not. So many men who wanted to marry Jews and Christians were actually forbidden by the Salafi scholars at the time, because they wanted to ensure that the Muslim society is strong enough to be able to continue and that no one is influenced by people from other religions. Okay, so the men can also be influenced by a woman's Christian ways or her Jewish ways, the same way a woman can be affected by her husband's Jewish or Christian ways. So the Salafi scholars, they completely banned women from marrying anyone who was not a Muslim, and they also banned the men. However, this did spark many debates where other scholars debated them, because they said, we cannot forbid what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal, has made permissible. So the four schools of thought were of the opinion that it was permissible for men to continue marrying from people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, despite Islam coming as the final religion. However, they all agreed that it was makruh. Okay, so it was something that was detested, something that was not encouraged. And again, this was to preserve the Muslim home so that the Quran and Sunnah could be soundly applied. And the reason why scholars were of the opinion that it was makruh is because it was very rare at the time to find a true believing Christian or Jew, whether that was a man or a woman. They were already rare in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he used to send many letters to Christian leaders, inviting them to Islam because they had become polytheists. They had become people who worshipped Jesus and saw Jesus as the Son of God. So they started to believe in the tampered Bible. Okay, so he would write letters to people like Caesar, inviting him to Islam because so many of the Christians at the time were polytheists. So it was only the minority in his time who were the believers and whom were categorized as the people who were halal for Muslim men to marry. So the women who were obtained via war, who were believing Christians and Jews, they were married by the Sahaba in order for the Ummah to grow, like I mentioned in my previous podcast, okay? So this was the ruling at the time on marriage to the people of the book. It wasn't actually encouraged. It was permitted, and no one was to force anyone to convert to Islam. So if these women were to accept marriage to the Muslim men, then they would be raising the children of the Muslim men as Muslims, and the Muslim Ummah would benefit from that. So as you can imagine, if it was already rare in that time, 1400 years ago, to find the true people of the book, then imagine our time. Most people will go through life never meeting any, because most of them are either in certain parts of the world and they marry each other because they have their own communities, or they just don't exist where you are. It is extremely rare to meet and actually marry people of the book, because even when you meet them, they prefer to marry from their own communities. Now, when it comes to women, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not list marriage to the men of the people of the book as a major sin like he did with other things. Okay, so he listed the marriage of Muslim women to polytheists as a major sin, but it's not listed as a major sin to marry Ahl al-Kitab. So the scholars agreed that when something is not made permissible and nor is it forbidden, it becomes a grey area. And when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, when you face a situation or a hukum shari'i, okay, that is in a grey area where people don't know if it's halal or haram, two things happen. The first thing is that it's best avoided. Okay, when in doubt, avoid it to be on the safe side. Don't take risks with your deen. If you're not sure, best to avoid it. Or it's been open for ijtihad. Ijtihad means that it's a subject that can be revisited in a different time. Okay, so in 7th century pagan Arabia, for example, there would have been cultural practices that don't apply to our time. They don't apply to our culture. And so some things have been left open for the scholars of the time to make ijtihad on, which is to make efforts, unanimous efforts, to come to a solution for the greater good of the deen of the people. Okay, so because it's not been forbidden and it's not been made permissible either, we cannot say it's a major sin, we cannot say it's haram, but we can say that it's open to ijtihad. So if the scholars believe that if women married people of the book, for example, because it's not clear whether it's permissible or not, then the scholars have the upper hand in saying that it's banned because they worry about the deen of the women that might be lost when they marry out of the faith. So when the scholars unanimously agree on something, the people have to obey, okay, because they are responsible for choosing the option that is in the greater benefit of the deen of the people. And that's why I say that if a woman was to find herself in a situation where there are no Muslim men or good Muslim men, because they've all got disorders and they're all abusive and God knows what, and a man from Ahl al-Kitab came to her, then it's not something that should be completely banned for her. If he is to agree to the conditions of raising the children as Muslims and so on and so forth, it's something that has to be explored by the scholars of the time. So right now there is no call for ijtihad for this subject because we don't live in societies where there are many people of the book. Okay, because they don't exist, or because they're extremely rare and they don't live in the West, for example, the scholars find no need to revisit the fatwa. They find no need to revisit the al-hukm al-shari'i for this, because it's not a social problem. It would be a social problem for women if we were surrounded by men from the people of the book and they happen to be better and safer marriage options than the Muslim men, whom Muslim women don't want to marry because they're not compatible, they're not educated, they're fornicators, they're narcissists, they're psychopaths, they're this, they're that, for many other reasons. Okay, so we're not calling for scholars to revisit this fatwa because these guys don't exist and these women don't exist. So what I'm trying to bring to the attention of you is not that women should be marrying from people of the book because these men are not around. It's the fact that if these people are rare to find, the true Ahl al-Kitab, then who is everyone marrying when they marry non-Muslims? They can only be marrying polytheists, and this is haram. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly made haram is not a subject of debate. Okay, we can't argue it, we can't debate it, because it's clearly stated that Muslim men and Muslim women are forbidden from marrying polytheists. And in the 2 case studies that I'm going to give you, you'll understand why it's haram. Okay, you'll understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids us from entering these types of marriages. And it's to save ourselves, right? It's to save our own deen and save our own akhirah. And also one of the major problems that a lot of scholars are not addressing properly in our day and age is what will happen to the Muslim women who marry Muslim men who drive them out of the deen. Because their main argument is that Muslim women should not marry non-Muslim men because they fear for the deen of the woman, right? They fear that women will be pushed out of the deen, they will stop wearing hijab, they will stop becoming believers when they marry polytheists or people from Ahl al-Kitab. Okay, fair enough. But what happens to Muslim women who end up marrying Muslim men who present themselves as being pious? Again, we go back to the covert narcissist here, who presents himself as being a pious, God-fearing man who is practicing and wants to raise his children on the Quran and Sunnah. You know, he'll sell you that story and everything. But the marriage you have with him makes you hate the day you were born. Yeah, it makes you hate everything to do with religion because of how much he uses his distorted understanding of the deen to manipulate you, gaslight you, abuse you. You know, the verbal abuse that he comes out with, the physical abuse he comes out with has driven thousands of Muslim women and reverts out of the deen. And I know this because I studied it. This was my PhD subject. Okay, I found that the majority of women who decided to leave Islam after they had reverted was because of the men. So in our day and age, we now have a serious dilemma, which is if we can't marry non-Muslim men because of the fear that they will drive us out of the deen, and we can't even marry the Muslim men because there's a fear that they will also drive us out of the deen. Now, a lot of men might say, oh, that's not the problem of the men, that's women and their weak iman. It's true, because you can't assume that all women have high levels of iman. Not all men have high levels of iman. Everyone is at a different stage in their iman in life. So it becomes very easy for someone who's not that educated, someone who is new to the deen, or someone who wasn't raised in a religious household, to be affected spiritually by someone who abuses them spiritually. Okay, you can't be blaming women for leaving the deen after they go through narcissistic abuse, because narcissistic abuse is horrific and it's demonic. The mission of the qareen, of this type of narcissist, is to drive someone out of the deen. So they will distort how you view the deen by giving you their evidence and their interpretation of it until they brainwash women who are not so educated into believing that their understanding of the deen is correct. And this is where all the problems happen. This is why you get so many women who come out of a marriage and they go the other way, right? They remove their hijab, they don't want to be practicing anymore, and they fall for non-Muslims. They just want nothing to do with Muslims anymore, and they run to non-Muslims who welcome them with open arms, they're not judgmental, they are kind, they are caring, and they decide that I'm going to marry a non-Muslim because it's safer for me to do that than marrying a Muslim. Again, I'm not saying this is right. I know this is haram. Before anyone drops a comment and says anything about me promoting marriage to the non-Muslims, I am not at all. I'm saying this is the consequence of narcissistic abuse that women go through with supposedly religious Muslim men. A lot of these women, especially if they're young and naive, they will run into the arms of another problem. Okay, this problem is going to further keep them away from their deen. Okay, especially if they're codependent. Now, if you're an empath, you will actually find that your deen gets stronger, your faith gets stronger while you experience narcissistic abuse. Okay, so if you find that your connection with Allah is actually stronger because you are turning to Him to help you, right? You're turning to Him for salvation. You want help, you want a way out, and you think, my prayers are going to save me. My prayers in this situation are my comfort. If you're one of those people, while you experience narcissistic abuse, you are an empath. SubhanAllah, Allah gives you the strength to have even more iman to get you through and out of this situation. But if you're codependent, you're going to go the other way. And it's the codependent women who exit a relationship with a narcissistic Muslim and run to the non-Muslims who show them kindness. So I'm mentioning this because this is the first story that I received from a woman who listened to the podcast, and she said that's exactly what happened to me. So she said that when she was in her 20s, she was married to a narcissistic man, and he was the choice of her father. Okay, so her father was also highly narcissistic, and he pressurized her into marrying this man. She's from an Asian background, and she said that she wasn't able to get out of it. She was highly pressured. She was always abused by her parents, and if she didn't marry this man, then they were threatening all sorts. They were threatening to kick her out, to not give her any inheritance, and so on and so forth. So she agreed to marry him on the basis that she would be making her parents happy, and he was also presenting himself as someone religious, and he was a student of knowledge and all of that, okay? So anyway, she wasn't attracted to him, but she said, I've got no way out of this. You know, I live with my parents, I depend on my parents, and going through the whole ordeal of being disowned and being kicked out was just too much to deal with at the time. And so she agreed to marry him. Now, he was in Pakistan at the time, and he was to move to the UK and live here. And she said she was married to him for 15 years and saw every colour of hell in that marriage. She developed autoimmune disease, she has PTSD, and she just went through so much in that marriage that gave her so many spiritual problems, because he would always abuse her spiritually. Now, she was in her 20s at the time. She said, I wasn't raised in a religious home. It was more cultural than religious. So they would use religion to scare the children into complying with what the parents wanted. But everything else was cultural. Even if it went against the deen, they didn't care. What they wanted was going to happen. So when she married this man and he manipulated her with religious texts, she would believe him because she had no idea what was right and what was wrong. She was very confused between religion and culture, so he managed to abuse her. He would physically abuse her, verbally abuse her, spiritually abuse her, and psychologically abuse her. And she had 3 children in this marriage, and she went through so much abuse that got her in hospital a few times. He'd broken teeth, he'd broken ribs, he'd broken her fingers in rages, and her father wouldn't help her out. Okay, all in the name of Islam. Okay, all of this is being done in the name of Islam. She said, 15 years I had to tolerate this, and my children had to see me suffer and go through this ordeal because of their father. And this so-called Muslim father wasn't a good role model for his children either. She said she was the one who used to wake the children up for Fajr. She used to remind them to pray. She would be the one to teach them about the Quran. And he was a student of knowledge. He couldn't be bothered. She said he would be sleeping through Fajr and that he would not be teaching them Quran. And she said he would only take them to Jum'ah prayer because everyone praised him. Oh, wow, mashallah, look at your children coming with you to Friday prayer. You know, you must be such a great dad. So he would only take the children to do Islamic activities and worship rituals when it made him look good. But apart from that, she said he even used to watch pornography and leave the evidence on the computer, on the family PC. Sometimes he would leave it on his laptop. His children would go to use the laptop or the PC and they would find obscene videos and obscene images that he'd forgotten about. He'd downloaded and forgotten about. And it caused her a lot of turmoil in the marriage because the children started to feel really uncomfortable around their father. So after a very long ordeal, he refused to divorce her. She had to go to the Sharia court, and the Sharia court were not complying with her. They were sending her back. They were not agreeing because he wasn't responding to the letters. She went through hell and back, okay? And she finally managed to get out of this situation with 3 children. So she was now a single mother with 3 children. And he said to her, you can forget any child maintenance. You can forget any help, any support. He went on to a new source of supply, got married very quickly. Of course, he only married her to get papers and everything. And she said he completely abandoned his children. So he's now left her in this situation. She's now in her 40s. And she says, no one wants to marry me. There's this whole taboo in the society she lives in that men don't marry divorcees, especially if they have children, especially if the fathers abandon them. Now they're thinking, they're going to be a financial burden on me. If the father's not around for them, then what are we going to do? This is going to be a hassle to deal with. And she's a woman with dark skin. She said, I'm not considered to be the most attractive of women. She said, with the illnesses that I had gone through, I'd put on weight and so on and so forth, right? So she was in a situation where she was stressed. She went back to living with her father, who was so annoyed that she had to come back. So she was getting more abuse from the father. Every 5 minutes he was telling her that she's a failure, that she's useless, that she's never going to get married and that she's a burden. So he just used her to the max. He said, while you're here, you can serve me. And the mother did the same. The mother was also toxic. So she's now living in this situation where she's got 3 children, nowhere to go because he never let her work. She's got no money, nothing to financially stand on. Had to go back to this abusive family of hers. And no one wants to marry her. She's getting no proposals. She said, I went on Muzmatch. I tried to find someone there. Everyone I was coming across were Muslim narcissists. She said I would go and meet them and they would either waste my time or they would tell me we don't want a single mother, or they would just be people who wanted money. They wanted benefits, right? They're all looking for a source of supply. And they're not taking her seriously because of her age and her children. So they were making it look like it was even a favour for them to be even speaking to her on the app. So she went through a lot of turmoil as well, getting to know Muslims who are wasting her time and who are putting her down because of her situation. And she decided that she didn't want to get married. She decided that she wanted to go and pursue a career or a job where she could get some money and move out of her parents' house because she was going through hell there as well. And, she could raise her children in peace. As a single mother, she said, I completely ruled out the idea of marriage after everything that I'd been through. So she'd been through this for about 5 to 6 years after her divorce. Just speaking to people, getting ghosted, getting disrespected, meeting men who just wanted a secret second wife, meeting men who just wanted sexual hookups. They thought, well, she's in a vulnerable situation with, 3 children on her own. She will accept anything. So they were proposing misyar marriage, mut'a marriage, like I said, zina. And she just had enough of it. She really had enough of it. So she went on a course so that she could get some skills, and she managed to get herself a job. And she said, when I started this job, she met a non-Muslim man there and he really liked her. Okay, so he got talking with her. He's getting to know her every day she comes. Now, she's quite a shy woman, okay? She's quite shy. She's very codependent. And she was feeling quite good about herself because this man was giving her so much attention, right? She'd never received that in her life. So this really nice man is showing kindness to her, empathy. She's sharing her story with him. And he's telling her that I'm actually, interested. Now, this happened obviously over a period of a few months where he's now falling in love with this woman and she's falling in love with him too, okay? He's not making her feel bad about her situation. He doesn't mind that she's got children. He doesn't mind that she's dark-skinned. He doesn't mind that she's a divorcee. So all the things that she was judged for by Muslims, he didn't care about. He looked at her as a person, as a woman, whom he thought was someone kind, someone whom he could spend his life with. So he was quite a fair bit older than her, so he didn't have the mentality of, I don't want to get married soon and all of that. He said, how does it work in your culture? She said, well, you would need to convert to marry me. So anyway, so he went away to do his research, and then he came back to her and said to her, look, I spoke to an imam and he said that I can marry you as a Christian. Okay, so he's now reading about the people of the book. He says, I'm a Christian. I don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I don't particularly want to convert. My family are not going to accept it. He's also got children from a previous marriage. So he believed that a conversion might, just make things a bit weird, and he wasn't comfortable with doing that. But he said, from what I've read, I'm considered to be from the people of the book. So she went to ask her local imam, and her local imam said no. If you are to marry him, he would have to convert. There would be no nikah without him converting because Ahl al-Kitab do not exist anymore. Okay? So she thought, well, I'm in love with this man now. I don't really accept that. If there's another imam who can get me married to him and accept that he's from Ahl al-Kitab, I'm going to go with that option. So she said we ended up going to the imam he knows, that he met, who told him this. And he found this imam via a Muslim friend of his. And she said we went to the mosque and we got the nikah done on the basis that he is from Ahl al-Kitab and he didn't need to convert. So she had to lie to her father and tell him that there's a man who wants to convert to marry me. Will you come and attend the nikah as my wali? The father refused. He said, my daughter's not going to marry any white man. If you're going to do it, then you've got nothing to do with me. So because she was so desperate to get out of her family house, she went ahead with it because in Islam, a divorced or widowed woman can actually get herself married. She doesn't need a wali present. It's better to, culturally it's better to, and it's better for the honour of the woman to always have a wali present when she gets married. Doesn't matter if you've been divorced 10 times, have your wali present, okay? It gives you honour and it helps a man to see that you've got male relatives around you who care about you. So she got herself married to this man and she moved in with him with her children, and she said it really wasn't an easy ride. Okay, so she's got 2 boys and 1 girl. The first thing that happened is that she went back to square one where she had to be the role model. Okay, so she couldn't have a role model in a Muslim husband, and now she can't have a role model in this man who's married her, who's considered to be a polytheist, okay, because he's not from Ahl al-Kitab. So she said, I had to make triple efforts to get the kids to pray. And she said over time, she noticed that her sons were not respecting her because she'd chosen a non-Muslim man to marry. Okay, they didn't have respect for their mother. They would always say to their mother, why did you not choose a Muslim stepfather for us? We want a stepfather whom we could go to the Jum'ah prayer with. We want a Muslim father who can, do activities with us and teach us Quran and pray with us and do this and do that. Why did you put us in this situation where you're married to a man who's got no deen? It's just because you love him. He treated her very well. She said he treated me so well. but she would always have problems with her kids, who had started to become very rebellious and disrespectful because of the fact they didn't have a role model. So they already had issues with being abandoned by their Muslim father. They already had a complex about that and not having any father figure in their life. And now the man who has come into their life, who is meant to be a father figure, a role model for them, is unable to be that person for them. Okay, is not able to be there for them spiritually and from a religious aspect. They still have to go and find another man outside of the home whom they can seek advice from. And this really bothered her sons. Okay, if you have boys in particular, you're really going to struggle with marrying someone who is not Muslim or someone who is a fresh convert. And when I say fresh convert, I mean someone who is converted just to marry you. You're going to really struggle with someone like this because, one, he doesn't really have any interest in learning about the deen. He just converted to marry you. He doesn't want to fast. He doesn't want to learn how to pray. He doesn't even want to read the Quran. He's like, I just did this for you. So if you have children or you have children with him later, you're going to face this problem where your children will become very disrespectful because they have no role model. When boys in particular have no role model, they will take it out on their mum. Even if the mother is a great woman and she's trying her best, every client I have who has a Muslim husband who is not a good role model have children who really disrespect her, no matter how much she tries to be a good role model for them. Okay, we live in a different time where kids are so disrespectful to their parents. There's no one to hold them accountable, and there are so many authorities now that don't allow you to discipline your children and all of that. So you've got to be careful as a parent now, because they can just go and complain about you to the teachers, and all of a sudden you've got social services knocking on your door. It's a hassle a lot of parents don't want, so they don't know how to discipline their children anymore. This becomes 10 times harder when you have a non-Muslim parent or a new convert as a parent who still doesn't know anything. They didn't convert for their own benefit in terms of, doing it for themselves and their own life, but they did it just for you. And I always advise new converts, especially when you convert for yourself, don't jump into a marriage with anyone. I really, really do not advise that you do that at all, because if you're a male convert and you marry a practicing Muslim woman from Arab or Asian backgrounds, then you're not going to have the upper hand in that marriage, especially if she's got children or when you do have children, because she will have the leadership role, right? She's the one who has to teach them everything because you're still learning the ropes. You're going to become emasculated by that woman if she becomes frustrated with you not being the role model she needs you to be when she needs you to be. Okay, so take your time before considering any Muslim woman for marriage, because you're going to have marital problems over this. Don't consider marrying any woman who is Muslim until you learn the ropes, until you learn how to pray, until you learn at least the basics of the faith and you're practicing it. And it's the same for women as well. New revert women, do not marry Muslim men. Don't jump into marriages with Muslim men until you are sufficiently educated in your rights and in everything that you need to do to become a practicing Muslim, so that you can choose well. Don't be dazzled by all of these men who present this religious facade to you, because you're going to get yourself in a deeper problem when this man controls you because he believes that you're ignorant. He believes you don't have sufficient knowledge about your rights to know that he's abusing you and taking advantage of you. Okay, take your time before you get into any kind of marriage. You're going to get so many people interested in you for marriage because you're Western, right? You look different and you might be naive and all of that. You'll get hunted by so many men who want to marry you because you're easy prey for them. I'm talking about the narcs in the society. Okay, so be very careful. If you have friends who are reverts, do not encourage them to get married quickly after their conversion. Let them study the deen, fall in love with the deen, learn about their rights, men and women, before they even consider someone for marriage. Okay? It will help them so much to do things that way. So, going back to this woman's story, she faced so many hardships in raising her children, and now she says they're not even practicing Muslims anymore. She says they got together with bad friends, they don't listen to me, my father doesn't help, they've got uncles who don't care because their uncles are all over the place, they smoke weed, they're all junkies. And she said, I just don't know who to turn to, and now I've got marriage problems with my husband because I cannot bond with him and connect with him on a spiritual level. He doesn't even want to learn how to pray or anything like that. He's not even considering converting. So a lot of women are in this predicament. Okay, you might be dazzled by these people and how good looking they are and how kind they are, and they welcome you with open arms. They're not judgmental, but look at the problems you're going to get yourself in. Okay, this is why homes need to be established upon the Quran and Sunnah by people who are capable of doing that. So even if you come across Muslims who are raised in a religious home, some of these men might be liberal. Some of these men do not have the capability of being a qawwam. If he does not have the capability to be a true qawwam and establish his home upon the Quran and Sunnah, it's even haram for you to marry that Muslim. Did you know that? It's an obligation upon you to leave anyone who will not help you with your deen and who is not going to be someone who will establish the Quran and Sunnah in his home as a leader. Okay, now when I say this, I don't mean it in the strict way. I mean it in terms of principles and values. So he's not going to be tyrannical with this and strict and extremist. No, like a lot of men are. I'm talking about the empath men who are true believers and they want to implement the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his home. You're going to need that type of role model for your children. And then she fell into an even bigger problem when she fell pregnant by this man. Okay, so now she's fallen pregnant and he's telling her, I don't want to circumcise my boys, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. So these are the problems you get yourself in. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids us from marrying polytheists, because it's a hassle, right? You might fall in love with them, they might treat you amazingly well, but look what you've had to pay to have that. You've had to pay a high price. And now she's depressed. Now she's pregnant by this man. She doesn't know what to do. And they're having marital problems. And she says the marriage is on the brink of breakdown because of all the problems that are happening. So don't risk it. Don't risk marrying people like this. If you're going to marry someone out of your culture, then, like I said, wait until they convert to Islam, do their research, start practicing, implementing Islam in their life, and then consider them for marriage. Especially if you want children. If you want to have children, this is the first right upon you that you have to fulfill for them. That you choose them good role models. Okay, so that's the case with this woman. I actually contacted an imam yesterday and I asked him about the imams who are facilitating the marriages between Muslim women and men whom they accept to be the people of the book. And he said that the majority of imams will not accept someone who is non-Muslim without a conversion certificate first. But he said the imams who are facilitating it, so this is a discussion they are having amongst themselves, is that the imams who are facilitating it are doing this because they believe it's the best of two evils. Okay, so one evil is zina, right? The spread of zina. If women don't find Muslim men to marry and they are falling in love with non-Muslim men, imams are worried that if they do not find a solution for this, then zina will spread. That's not the imam's problem. That's the problem of these men and women. But because they have problems and disorders and narcissism and all of that, people have to go through an entire healing journey to be able to understand the dangers of running into problematic marriages, right? It's going to take them time. So we're talking about the younger generation here more than the older generation. They are worried about the spread of zina. So they say that if a man comes to us saying that he doesn't believe Jesus is the Son of God, he accepts that he doesn't stop his wife from practicing her religion, he doesn't stop the wife from putting a hijab on her daughters if she wanted to, and he doesn't stop her from raising the children as Muslims and so on, then it's best that we allow that marriage to go ahead than to not allow it and let the woman fall into zina with non-Muslim men. So they are considering it the best of two evils. Halal, haram. I'm not talking about halal or haram here. I'm talking about the reasons why lots of imams are facilitating these marriages. And he also said that if women have a high level of iman and they're desperate to be mothers, right? They're desperate to be wives and they don't want to go back home and marry someone from the village who's uneducated and narcissistic and all of that, then imams are also showing some compassion towards the women and allowing these marriages to go ahead so that women have a fair chance of having a family and children of their own, whom they can raise as Muslims on the condition of the man agreeing to that. So these marriages are still marriages to polytheistic people. But it's the effort of some imams to try and combat these rising problems in society by allowing women to engage in these marriages. So a lot of imams still hold the opinion that these marriages are invalid and they don't get involved. They don't allow it themselves. So it's the responsibility of the imams. But like I said, I don't encourage anyone to do this. If you do something like this, you will pay the price of it, unfortunately. In both lifetimes, you need to learn how to heal, how to be okay with being alone, how to wait for the right Muslim partner to come, especially if you're a single mother. You have even more of a responsibility to ensure that the next man you marry is going to be a wonderful, role model for your children. You have that responsibility of choosing well. Don't be running into these kinds of marriages just because someone shows you a bit of kindness, okay? Men who truly value you, men who truly fall in love with you, will have no problem looking into your faith. They will have no problem, doing what it takes to be with you. But again, they will do it because they want to share a life with you. They're not going to convert just to marry you. They're going to convert and learn your way of life, learn the way you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so they can share that part of your life with you. Okay, that's what people who really love will do for you. Yeah, they will see that, okay, a big part of her life is her being a practicing Muslim. I really want to be with this woman, so let me look into it. Maybe there is benefit to it. Let me have a look at what's expected of me as a convert. Yeah, okay, I'm going to have to stop this and stop that. I'm going to have to start doing this and start doing that. If he's okay with it and he loves you that much, he'll just do it. Okay, don't get roped in by the shaitan to invalid marriages to polytheists, because people of the book do not exist anymore. And if they do exist, they are not in the West. They are not found here. They are found in Muslim countries. And like I said, even if you find them and you meet them and you get on with them, the majority of them will still marry from their own societies. They have no reason to marry a Muslim when they can marry from their own people, right? Their own societies. And many of them who do come across Muslims do end up converting to Islam. They do, men and women. So, it's, like I said, it's a complex subject, but that's just my 2 cents on this woman's case. Now, the second case I received was from a man. And the first line of his email to me was, I wish that there was this podcast available 20 years ago. He said, your podcast would have saved me from a lifetime of hell by being in an invalid marriage with a polytheistic woman whom I believed was someone from the people of the book. So this man, he met his wife at university. Okay, so he was a practicing Arab man who came to the UK to study, and he fell in love with this woman who was very beautiful, again, dazzled by the blue eyes and the blonde hair and the white skin. It was something that he wasn't used to seeing back home. So he got into a relationship with her, and he said, although I was quite a practicing Muslim, I didn't have much knowledge of the deen because I was raised in a home that was, again, more cultural than religious. So we weren't taught much about Ahl al-Kitab and about these things. So he said, all I knew was that it was permissible for Muslim men to marry Jews or Christians. He didn't truly understand who the real Ahl al-Kitab were, okay? And the Salafi scholars were not banning the Muslim men from marrying Jews and Christians, okay? So he thought, okay, it's open. If a woman says she's Christian, that's it. He's not thinking about the long-term implications of what she actually believes in and what she does and, celebrating Christmas and all of that. So he said she was someone who came from a family who celebrated Christmas. They weren't really practicing. They would go to church for Easter and sometimes a Christmas service here and there or for a funeral. He said they weren't that practicing, but khalas, to me, she was a Christian and that was good enough. So her family had major issues with her wanting to marry an Arab. Okay, they're all thinking he's going to oppress you, he's going to force a hijab on you, he's going to do this, he's going to beat you, he's going to do all of these horrific things. So they didn't give their blessing. He said they created so many problems and they were adamant that, I was going to be a terrorist and get her involved in all of these things. So her family were actually not very nice to him. Again, this is a huge indication that they are not from Ahl al-Kitab, because Ahl al-Kitab, like I said, they have the same morals and principles as Muslims. And he said, they had loads of dogs and they were drinking and all of that. But he said, I was so in love with her. He's like, I just had to marry her. So because she didn't receive the blessings of her family, the relationship got delayed, right? The relationship dragged out for, I think he said 3 years. And during these 3 years, he fell into zina with her. Okay, so now he's having sexual relations with this woman because the marriage is getting delayed as a result of her family not agreeing to it. And now he finds himself in a huge problem. He's now in a serious haram relationship with this woman where he's now fallen into zina, something he never thought he would do. He said, I came from quite a conservative family where we don't do things like this. So he wanted to get married to her quickly when, after he met her, but her family said, no, we don't have this. What's this? After 6 months, you want to marry her? In English culture, as you know, this is something that's considered to be a red flag. Why are you rushing marriage? But he wanted to rush it to make it halal. So anyway, it ended up dragging out to 3 years and he ended up getting involved in this sexual relationship. And eventually, they did go to a mosque and they did marry. And he got an extension to study his master's and PhD as well in the country. So they decided to live here in the UK and not go back to his home country. But he said to her, after I finish my PhD, we go back to live in my country. She agreed. She said, it's fine, no problem. So he said they got married and she moved in with him. And she had no desire whatsoever to convert or anything like that. So he said, with time, I stopped praying. With time, I even stopped fasting in Ramadan. He said, my iman depleted so much being with her that I ended up becoming like her. It's like I even started drinking. I started to be influenced by her way of life because of how much he was in love with her. So she would take him away from prayers. For example, it would be time for him to pray. She would say, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that. He said, eventually, I found something happening to me where my iman was slipping away. He said we would have a Christmas tree in our home because she really wanted one. They would celebrate Christmas with her family. They would celebrate, other festivals during the year. They wanted to get involved in Halloween because she had children in her family. He said, I got dragged into the Halloween practices of the family. And he said she fell pregnant and we had a son. And he started to feel really guilty, okay, because now he's living as a very liberal Muslim. He said, I just don't know what happened to me. This was his qareen, okay? He doesn't understand. When you're around people you're not meant to be with, who are not halal for you, your iman will become so depleted because your qareen is working with theirs to deplete you from that situation. Remember when I said to you in the podcast about why people are attracted to narcissists? Your qareen makes these people very attractive to you. Okay, people who are not halal for you or people who are not good for you, your qareen will distort your vision of people. I'm telling you, okay? Your vision will be so distorted that you will start to see people who are not good for you as very attractive. And that's why a lot of men will bend over backwards for women who are clearly not good for them, who are clearly narcissistic, clearly polytheistic. They'll make any excuse just to have her. Okay, and Allah warns men about this. He warns men, like, a believing slave woman is better for you than a woman who is polytheistic, even if she's beautiful. He warns men about this because your qareen now comes into play. This is where he starts to work on your depletion of iman, okay? So he said his son came into the world and he's now feeling really guilty because he's getting involved in all of these activities that his mother is doing, right? He said she's not religious at all. She comes from a family that's not religious. And if they go to church, they pray to Jesus, right? They're of the belief that Jesus is the Son of God. She's not practicing at all. She doesn't pray, none of that. She's just your average Western woman who is Christian by name, but doesn't read the Bible, not practicing, nothing, okay? So he said that my son started to grow up with pagan practices. Now, he wasn't thinking of these things as being pagan at the time. It's when he came out of the situation that he finally, opened his eyes to the situation that he got himself in. So, Ahl al-Kitab, the true people of the book, do not celebrate Christmas. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in Easter or any other pagan festival or holiday like Halloween, because these are all satanic, okay? So, the true people of the book are not involved in any of that. They don't do any of it. They're against it. They're against Christmas. If you look online, you'll find loads of people talking about it, how the true Christians do not celebrate Christmas. And if you look, you can just go on Google, right? I'm not going to go into all of the stories, the pagan stories behind all of these rituals and festivals, but you will understand why it's haram for Muslims and Christians and Jews to participate in pagan celebrations, okay? So I'll give you an example. The pagans from thousands of years ago, they were trying to figure out who was God, okay? So they worshipped the moon, they worshipped the sun, they worshipped, animals. They thought, okay, animals die, plants die, the moon disappears, the sun disappears. They wanted something that would always be there and doesn't die, okay? So whatever doesn't die, they know that this is God. This is what needs to be worshipped. So they went through many different things that they worshipped. Okay, animals, plants, everything. Until they came across the Christmas tree. Because the Christmas tree is evergreen. So they're saying the Christmas tree is the tree that doesn't die. It is green all year round. This is God. So they started to worship the Christmas tree. They would bring the Christmas tree into the house and decorate it and worship it. And that's why people have Christmas trees in their homes. It's a pagan worship ritual. Okay, people used to worship the Christmas tree because it's evergreen. They believed it was God. So people might think it's a harmless practice to have a Christmas tree in the house that looks very pretty there in the corner and twinkly and all of that. But what you don't realize is that you're continuing a pagan tradition. Okay, you're keeping that tradition alive. The same way we are meant to keep the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad alive, you're actually contributing to keeping a pagan tradition alive without knowing that these were things that they used to worship. And that's why it's forbidden to have a Christmas tree in a Muslim home. And you find loads of Muslims who do it. Loads of Muslims are continuing the tradition of the pagans. And they're getting involved in these satanic rituals of, trick-or-treating, taking their kids out with the neighbours to trick-or-treat. You are contributing towards the continuation of pagan practice. I mean, even with Santa, if you look at the story, the real pagan story of Santa, you will understand how satanic it is. Even the name Santa, if you move the letters around, it's Satan, okay? Because there's this belief that they're trying to instill in children that if you're good, Santa or this Satan is going to reward you at the end of the year and he'll give you everything that you want. So forget praying to God, right? Forget making dua for what you want. Forget about all of these things. Santa, i.e. Satan, is going to give you everything you want. So they dress him up as this, old man who comes down the chimney into people's homes and is the one who makes all children happy. And you'll be horrified to know as well that there's actually paedophilia behind the whole story of this old man, interacting with these young children and coming into people's homes and all of that. So when you get involved with people who are polytheistic and they're not from Ahl al-Kitab, this is what you're going to drag yourself into without knowing. You don't realize what you're continuing in the next generation of children, okay? Because she used to say, well, I want my children to get involved in Christmas. And when you marry into a family that's not Muslim and your children see other children getting loads of presents at Christmas and Santa and this and that, they're going to sit on Santa's knee and they're getting, little gifts here and there. Know that you are corrupting your children by confusing them. Okay, not all parents know how to raise their children in such a difficult situation, because children will look at their Muslim parents and think, why is my parent so strict? My parent doesn't want me to have fun. Why can't I get involved in Christmas? Why can't I get Christmas presents? Why can't we have a tree in the house like everyone else? Because he's got cousins who are all not Muslim. So you put your children in a very difficult situation when you do that, okay? And you'll find that most of these children as well, they don't have any celebrations for Eid. They don't have, prayers at home with their parents, with the Muslim parent. And their deen is lost as well. Okay, their deen becomes lost. They will be more inclined to follow the ways of their cousins because the Muslim parent has now lost complete control over the upbringing of the children. Okay, we now live in a time where the mother has more influence over the upbringing of the children than the father. I mean, even if you look at expats, right, the Western women who marry Gulf men, Saudi, Qatar, Kuwait, the Emirates, Saudi, you will find that most of them are not Ahl al-Kitab. They marry the foreign women and the children get put in international schools and the children don't know their deen. I know children who don't even speak Arabic properly anymore and they live in Saudi because they go to American and English schools at the wish of their non-Muslim mothers, okay, who believe that they're from Ahl al-Kitab. And these Gulf men, like I said, they're only marrying these women for their beauty. They've got no deen. They're not practicing their own religion. There's no education. They literally met the Stacey and Tiffany and Janet when they came to study. And now there's this phenomenon where Gulf men are now marrying tourists, especially in Saudi. They're seeing all these lovely, Russian girls and English girls and all of that coming to visit Saudi, and they're marrying them just on the basis of their beauty. Are they thinking about their children? Are they thinking about, if this woman is actually a practicing Christian? Are they thinking about the future of their children? Oh, they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. But as soon as women talk about marrying from Ahl Kitab, they jump on that haram train, right? They're so quick to jump into women's affairs without looking at their own. This is something that really annoys me about Arab men in particular and Asian men. They commit every sin under the sun. Every sin, right? They're in an invalid marriage. They commit zina. They smoke weed. They're porn addicts. They're this and they're that. As soon as someone says anything that is controversial about women's rights, they're quick to jump on that haram train. Haram this, bid'ah this, shirk this, kafir this. They're quick to do that. Look at your own situations. Look what you've got yourselves into. Right? A lot of men are not going to like this. But you've got to wake up to your own situations and your own invalid marriages. You've married polytheists and ruined the future of your children. And A lot of Gulf men in particular will become very uncomfortable with this. They'll get very defensive, very angry, because they know they're wrong. They know they've done the wrong thing. They know these women are not from Ahl al-Kitab. They know these women have never stepped foot into a church in their life. They know that these women have never read the Bible. Ahl al-Kitab, who are you trying to kid? You're only trying to kid yourselves. You're only trying to justify and twist the deen to your own liking so that you can get away with your desires. They say, oh, women follow their desires. It's actually the men who follow their desires. Men will twist all the rules in religion to facilitate everything that they want to do. Secret second wife, misyan marriage, mut'a marriage, invalid marriages, marriages to polytheists, getting involved in zina and justifying it, saying, oh, I'm going to marry her at the end of it. They get away with abusing women because they say, oh, we have authority, we can discipline our women. Seriously, I've had enough of listening to this rubbish. Okay, men are so quick to jump onto that train and brand women as being misguided and all of that because they want to turn away the eyes from the problems that they've got themselves into. So going back to this man's story, sorry, I keep deviating because I remember something important to say. So he said time went on and he ended up staying in the UK because he got offered a job and he found it much easier to just stay here, and she wanted to stay here, and he really wanted to go back to his home country. He was homesick, right? He wanted to go back and live there, but he has 2 children now by this time, and he decided to just settle in the UK so that he can be near his children. At this point now, he wants a divorce. At this point, him and his wife are fighting like cat and dog because the children are turning out like their mother. And they are preferring to be with their mother because they're seeing their father as strict. Now, by this point, like I said, he's lost his deen as well. And now he's feeling really guilty. He's feeling that something is seriously wrong. I need to be a role model for these children, and I need to go back to being a practicing man. So some of his friends were telling him, look, you know, you've completely lost your way, and now that you've got 2 boys, you need to be a role model for them. So he tries to get back into the deen, right? So he's trying to start establishing a routine of praying and everything, and she doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. She's now used to him being so liberal all this time. She's getting away with whatever she wants to get away with. Now that he's becoming a bit more religious, and he's starting to point things out. I don't like it when you do this. I don't like it when you wear this. I don't like it when you do this with the kids. I don't want my kids being exposed to this. I don't want my kids going to your family and seeing them drink. I don't want my kids celebrating Christmas anymore. Now there are problems. Now they're fighting like cat and dog at home in front of the children, okay, because he is now trying to regain some control out of fear that his children are going to lose themselves. So he decides to stick with it. He's like, I got myself in this situation. I can't leave my kids, right? He really wanted to leave the situation. He really wanted to get a divorce, but he's like, I can't leave my children. So he's got 2 boys at this time. He stays with this woman and she gets pregnant for the 3rd time. She now has a daughter. And now he's thinking, I've got myself into an even bigger problem now because my daughter is going to end up being like the mother. Who do I have as a role model around me in my life for her to look up to as a Muslim woman? He's got nobody. His family are all back home, and everyone whom they know, they're all liberal. Even the Muslims whom they know are liberal. So now he's panicking. He decides to stay with her. So he's stayed with her in this marriage for almost 20 years. And his fear of his daughter turning out like the mother became a reality. And not only that, he was now going through narcissistic abuse at the hands of his wife. So she knew she had full control over the situation. She knows he married her for her beauty. She knows that he's sick and tired of her. So she took advantage of him in the sense that, well, I'm going to stay here because I'm living a good life. I have money. He comes from a wealthy family. So he was getting a very good income from the family while he was studying. And he also received a good income from the new job that he'd received. So she was there for the financial benefits. But they were not on good terms at this point. So when his daughter reached teenage years, he said, maybe this is the best time for me to leave this marriage. I'm going to take the kids back to my home country. He asked me not to mention the country he comes from. And he said, I will raise them as Muslims over there. So he told her, I want a divorce and I want the children to come and live with me. She opened a court case against him, saying that he's going to radicalize my children. He wants my daughter to cover. He wants my daughter to do this and that. And he went through a horrific court ordeal. He had the police at his door. He had social services coming round. He said for an entire year and a half, my life was complete hell because of all the accusations she was putting against him. And he said, I was only trying to do what was best for my children because I didn't want them to grow up as kuffar. He realised that he'd made such a terrible mistake marrying someone who not only was not from the true Ahl al-Kitab, but she wasn't a Muslim. He said, I should have married a Muslim. I should have married someone from back home. And he's like, but it was my lesson that I had to learn. So he's had the children taken away from him now. He's not allowed to have the children with him in his home country because of the allegations that she made against him. They are now with their mother and they prefer to be with the mother because the father became so strict towards the end of the marriage. And he said he ended up going back to his home country and it's only his eldest son who has contact with him. He says, every time I try to call my kids, she's always there. She puts microphones when I speak to them privately. She's very intimidating and she just makes life absolute hell when he tries to get in contact with them. He said, unfortunately, my daughter I'm seeing, she's just going to go the other way. She's going to be just like her mother. He's like, after the divorce, the mother went completely AWOL. She's going out in really tiny mini skirts. She's going clubbing. She's doing things that teenagers do just to annoy me. She's eating pork. She posts on her Snapchat and stuff all the things that he used to not like her doing, all the Christmas celebrations. And she's showing him in all the videos that, look what I'm getting your kids involved in. There's no more of your Islamic stuff. They're going to do what we do. All the pagan stuff. They're going to get involved in that. If my daughter wants a boyfriend, she can have a boyfriend. She can go around in a miniskirt. And there's nothing he can do about it. And he's in severe depression right now because he says that it's been years now and I can't do anything about it because there's been a court order that the daughter in particular stays with the mother. And the daughter doesn't want to go and live with her father in the home country because she's getting all the freedom she wants here. She's very rebellious. And he said, I've lost my children. They're all being raised as polytheists. And he says, this was my punishment. And he said that when I listened to your podcast and I heard the ayah, الزاني لا ينكح إلا زانية أو مشركة, he said that was my punishment. He said, not only did I commit zina with her, but I married a polytheist and this is my punishment. Because Allah said that people who engage in zina will marry similar types of people and polytheists. So he's recovering now from this entire ordeal and he doesn't know what to do. He's in this deep depression because he can't help but blame himself and feel so guilty at the loss of the future of his children, And I did tell him, I said, look, just pray for their guidance. There's nothing much you can do now but pray for them and always open the door for them with loving arms whenever they want to come back, whenever they want to visit. You have to be that loving father and just pray for their guidance. Loads of children go through situations like this and experiences like this and they do come out believers at the end of it. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them. You don't have to beat yourself up for the rest of your life over a mistake that you made, thinking that all your children are destined to be kuffar and die kuffar. No, it's not always the case. Sometimes Allah will guide people. Maybe they go on a healing journey to, recover from their traumas from childhood and the fighting that they saw between the parents, and then they realize, actually, I don't want to be this person anymore. I actually want to be Muslim and I want to go to my father's country and explore Islam there and explore the culture there and everything. Some people do that. I mean, I know someone who married a man who converted just to marry her, and she has one boy, and he was actually practicing. He was praying and everything before she married this man, because he had no intention to actually practice Islam. And he as well, he was 15 at the time, and he was really upset with his mum for marrying, someone who wasn't an Arab. He really wanted an Arab stepfather, but she never met one. She said, what can I do? I've not met a nice one. I've not met anyone decent to marry. This is the man who came into my life, whom I think, is suitable for me to spend the rest of my life with. If I met a nice Arab man, I would have married a nice Arab Muslim man. So he actually lost his deen as well. He ended up just losing his prayers. He lost everything because his father, again, abandoned him, or his father doesn't really care. And he used to go to the mosque and everything with his dad. But his dad remarried, had a new family, and didn't have enough time for him. So he rebelled and went the other way. He got involved in gangs and smoking weed and all of that. He lost his deen as well. And, this is the hardship that you're going to go through, especially if you have children. Even if you don't have children, you expect it with any children you might have, with someone who is not from Ahl al-Kitab and someone who is not a practicing and perfect Muslim. That's what you're going to get. It doesn't matter how much you love these people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to stay away for a reason. There's a hikmah, there's always a wisdom in everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to avoid. Okay? I always tell people, if you're truly empathic, if you're truly people who love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will only marry other Muslim believers. You'll only do that because you're thinking about your children. You're thinking about your own deen as well. You need someone to lift you up when you're weak in your iman. If you don't have someone to pull you up when you're weak, you're in trouble. I'm telling you, you're in trouble. And I have seen people marry the true people of the book, and they've been fine with their deen. These people have pulled them up. But like I said, it's very rare. It's very, very rare for this to happen. So, I'm just giving you these two case studies because this is what a lot of people find themselves in. A lot of people find themselves in these problems. I mean, I've got a couple of uncles who married Western women and they destroyed their lives as well. My grandfather, Allah yarhamu, he warned them, don't do it. It's best that you marry Muslim women from your own Saudi society. And they went to America, Canada, the UK to study and came back with these, Western wives whom they were proud of in the beginning, but then got really sick of later. My uncles, I got two who married Western women. They got severely depressed. And they got homesick being with these women as well, because these women were not a part of the culture. They didn't even speak the language. It was just very difficult for them to integrate. There are exceptions to the rule. Okay, there are men who marry these women who do end up converting and they manage to fix the situation. So he would have married a polytheist and then in the marriage she would have converted to Islam. That's how you can fix the situation, right? By her converting and raising the children as Muslims and her following the cultural rules and regulations and adapting to life. I've seen some women like that who have done that in Saudi, who have been married to Saudis, but it's not common. The majority of expat women in the Gulf have no interest whatsoever in being Muslims. They enjoy getting integrated into the culture. They try to learn Arabic and all of that. But when it comes to tarbiyah, the Islamic upbringing of their children, no. They're no good. And these women actually tend to become very arrogant as well. So they will come from very poor backgrounds in the UK and America, and they're brought back to Saudi by these men who give them luxurious lifestyles, and all of a sudden they become very arrogant and they look down upon Muslim women and they're like, oh, you look at us, your men have preferred to marry us, and they just become unpleasant to be around. I've been around people who are expats in Saudi and they're not pleasant. They're not pleasant women. They become very arrogant and they just don't care about the Islamic upbringing of the children. They just want a good time. They want that luxurious lifestyle. For once in their lives, they can marry a man who's got some money. You know, they don't have to put up with Jack down the road who works in McDonald's, or Lee who, mows everyone's lawn. They just don't want that anymore. They want someone who's going to give them some luxury. And as soon as they have the luxury, they turn very arrogant. And it's this arrogance that causes the Arab men of these societies to just lose interest in these women. And life becomes very difficult with these women. I mean, I had one of my uncles say to me, I wish I married a Saudi woman. He's like, I miss the bond that I have with women of my own society. Someone who understands my jokes, someone who understands the culture, someone who knows the deen. I don't have to babysit her. I don't have to teach her ABCs. I don't have to teach her everything from scratch. He got exhausted with his wife. He really regretted not marrying an Arab woman. He really regretted not marrying a Muslim. And he just put up with it. And he wasn't allowed to take a second wife because hell would have been unleashed on him by a Western woman who you do that to. And he got married in America. And so his marriage does not permit him to take on a second wife, the same way as that works in the UK, right? You can be arrested and you can get into a lot of trouble if you take on a second wife in the UK, if you've registered your marriage. So he found himself in a real pickle, because had he done that, had he taken a second wife who was a Saudi Muslim woman, then he could have lost half his assets to this American lady. So he felt stuck. He felt stuck with her for a very long time. And he was miserable. So don't do it to yourselves. Don't be dazzled by what shaitan makes appealing to you. Always remember, what's more pious for me to do? What's right for me to do? Is it right for me to marry this woman? What kind of future are my children going to have with her? Is she going to teach my children well? I'm telling you, these children are not going to be raised by any mother who's going to teach them the deen. If you think this Stacey is going to teach your children Aqidah and Tawheed and Quran and Hadith, you're living in cuckoo land. Because that's not what's going to happen at all. She's going to be on TikTok with them and showing off her lavish lifestyle and her lovely new home. And her poor mama Karen is just watching, crying, looking at her pauper life in a council estate, thinking, what am I doing here? I need to go and find myself a Saudi man as well. So all the Gulf men who get offended at what I'm saying will be upset because they know it's the truth. This is the reality they're living. And they've got themselves in a situation where even if they don't have children with these women, you have not invested in your akhirah by marrying a woman who can help you with your deen, who can uplift you spiritually, because every man and every woman will be rewarded according to the intention they had when they chose someone as a marriage partner. Okay, so if your intention was to marry this woman just because she's beautiful and she's a trophy that you can show off to everyone in your community, then that's as far as it's going to go. But if your intention is that I marry this woman because she is an excellent role model for my children, she's going to help me with my iman, she's a great asset to my life, she's motivation for me, she's a comfort for me, she's a partner, she's a friend, she's a lover, she's everything to me, and she's going to be someone who's going to bring me closer to the deen. She's going to be a wonderful, loving, caring mother who's not going to give my children childhood traumas and all of that. Allah will place so much barakah in that intention. Even if you don't end up having children from this woman, she might pass away, or she might get sick, or she may not be able to have children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the reward as if it happened. As if all those children had come into your life and she raised them in that way. Because that was your intention. And the same applies to the men. So when a woman chooses the right man to marry because she knows that this is the right man who will establish the Quran and Sunnah in the home, he's going to be a loving father. Again, he's not going to be the type to give his children childhood traumas and put them through hell, because he believes in peace and love and all of that and safety. You will get the reward for choosing such a man. Because I can't tell you how important it is for you to be a good role model for your children. You're going to get so much reward if you are a good one. Okay, don't be that type of man or woman who wastes a golden opportunity to have a wonderful home for your children and for yourselves as well. Okay, the more wonderful, loving homes we have, the better our societies are going to be. It has to start from here. It has to start from here. No more of these invalid haram marriages. Okay, whether it's to psychopathic Muslims, narcissistic Muslims, or to people whom you're not supposed to be marrying, all these polytheists. Avoid both. Avoid them both. And if you cannot avoid both, if these are your only options around you, then stay single. I'm telling you, this will be your jihad and nafs. Your jihad and nafs will be to abstain from all of these options until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends you an imperfect Muslim. Because I promise you, if you choose one of those options, you're going to live a life of hell. And you will always regret it. Every single person who made such a terrible mistake and married someone narcissistic always regretted it. They always wish they never did. They always wish they could turn back time and be single instead. Okay, so if you find that all the options around you for marriage are just not good, they're not good enough as an investment for your life and your future and your akhirah, abstain. Completely abstain from entertaining any of these relationships. Okay, learn how to enjoy your own company, learn how to heal, and work through all of your traumas so that you no longer become desperate to have someone, right? Get rid of that codependency that makes you latch on to people because you're lonely, because you want love, because you want a family. Wallahi, it's not worth it when you go for the wrong person. You will never be happy having a family or any children with someone who doesn't treat you well. Okay, so learn how to enjoy your own company. This is my top advice for you, because it will be your jihad and nafs. When all the options around you are not good, it now becomes your jihad and nafs to abstain for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, you stay away from haram relationships, you stay away from invalid marriages, and you stay away from zina and all of that for the sake of you maintaining your peace and for the sake of you waiting for what you deserve. You will get what you deserve, inshallah. If it's meant for you to be married in this life, that person will turn up. That person will turn up. And I told you before, that person could be from Ahl al-Kitab. It could be a rare miracle occurrence. You might meet one of them people. Or they're going to be someone who is an empathic Muslim. And like I said, the priority is the empathic Muslim. Pray for an empathic Muslim. Pray for them to come your way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send them your way if a husband or a wife like that is a part of your life journey. If it's a part of your mission, if you need an empathic Muslim husband or wife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send you one to help you with your journey. Like I said, some people are fine on their own. Some people don't need anyone. Some people are strong on their own. When you have people around you and they don't uplift you, believe me, you're stronger on your own. You'll be better off on your own. So learn how to accept the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your life. Don't latch on out of desperation for, partnership and companionship and all of that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saving you for someone much better. Be patient. Okay, be patient and do what's best for yourself and your future. You can't be taking risks like this. Doesn't matter how lonely you get. Get yourself involved in activities. Get yourself surrounded by good people, good friends who remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, go on a holiday, travel, do certain things, start a business. There are loads of things that you can do with your life than just sit there and be depressed because you don't have a husband or wife. There's so much you can do. So much you can do if you actually want to. You need to explore those options and find the best ways of occupying your time. Fi sabilillah. Again, this will be your jihad and nafs, okay? Everything that you do to take yourself away from the depression, you'll be rewarded for. When you get yourself involved in a new hobby, a new activity, you'll be rewarded for that because you're taking your mind away from continuously being depressed and thinking about what you don't have. Focus on what you do have. Focus on what you can do. Focus on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the opportunity and the abilities to do, and you'll get reward for that. All your blessings will come to you when you least expect it. When you're not looking and when you're not chasing, those opportunities and those wonderful people and partners will pop up into your life when you least expect it. And that's when it's the most beautiful experience. When you're not expecting it. This person comes out of the blue like a miracle. Okay, so just look into the things that you can do that keeps you away from depression and wallowing in so much self-pity, and take advantage of the youth and the time and the energy that you still have and go and do some amazing things. Charity events, fundraising, you can help people, with their businesses, with their projects, whatever. It could be anything. Get yourself involved in all of that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place a lot of barakah and a lot of surprises in your life. Okay, those surprises, you'll see them. And even if you don't see them in this life, they've been saved for you for the next, inshallah. You might get surprises that you didn't even pray for. You might just one day, find yourself coming into a lot of money, or you come into a great opportunity for work. It could be anything. So trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abstain from the things that He told us to avoid. Have Allah as a priority above your desires and everything and everyone else. And you will see how your life will change with that mindset shift. Okay, just change the mindset. You're not missing out on anything. You're not missing out on children, marriage, companionship when it's not with the right person. You can never miss out on anything. What's meant for you will come to you. Always remember that. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, inshallah. I'll end it here. And I hope it's clarified the information that I've given you in the previous podcast. And as always, do like the podcast, do share it with other people if you feel like it's benefited you. And do subscribe to the channel if you want more related content. I am planning on recording content, inshallah, on how to raise Muslim empathic children. Okay, so whether you're living with a narcissistic partner or you are co-parenting with one, I will give you some tips on things to do that will ensure, inshallah, that your children will have a decent start to life when it comes to learning how to be empathic and getting rid of their narcissistic traits. We've got to nip them in the bud from the beginning and teach them how to tame their narcissistic traits, because people will always have narc traits. So if children don't understand how to deal with their narcissistic traits and how to express themselves properly, then they're going to grow up with a disorder. So inshallah, I will get round to that. I've still got so many subjects to get through, inshallah. But thank you for listening until now, if you're still with me. Don't forget to grab a copy of the book if you haven't already. It's called The Muslim Narcissist, so you can find it on Amazon. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, you can contact me via the email address below and I'll get back to you, inshallah. So until the next podcast, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.